Finally, it's all about generating ideas. Welcome to phase 4 of the design thinking process, ideation. The goal of this phase is to generate as many ideas as possible, which will then form into concepts, and those concepts can then be later turned into prototypes. So based on our how might we question, which we formulated the point of view, we start creating lots and lots of ideas within the team. And after that, we turn them into prototypes to test if we're going the right way. In order to have a successful ideation phase, we need to consider a few things. First of all, you need the right materials. So typically for ideation, you need lots and lots of post-its. Because on the post-its, you write down your ideas, and then later on, you can cluster the ideas according to different topics. It helps if you have a whole bunch of pens. Ideally, they shouldn't be too thin or too thick, so you can make your ideas visible. And another best friend of mine is the so-called time timer, where you can set yourself different time boxes for different brainstorming exercises. Before you actually start a brainstorming workshop, make sure that the whole team knows about certain brainstorm rules. For example, defer judgment. That means that every idea is a good idea in the beginning, so don't criticize ideas because it will actually bring the creative flow down. Another important rule is encourage wild ideas. Wild ideas are super important because they might sound crazy in the beginning, but when you actually continuously iterate them, they become really, really good ideas and lead you away from the obvious ideas. Another really important idea is that you should always build on the ideas of others. So one person has an idea, and instead of just leaving it, just build on it by saying, yes, and we can do this and that, and yes, and we can do that. This way, ideas actually evolve over time. And don't underestimate the power of sugar, because during a brainstorm session, believe me, your team will need it. So what happens during a brainstorm session? Normally, ideas happen in waves. So in the beginning, you have lots and lots of ideas. Then after a while, it sort of goes down. And this is where you actually need a change of perspective to push the team into the next wave of idea generation. And the same thing happens again after some time. No more ideas come, and you need another new perspective. And this is actually where it gets interesting, because that way you move away from the more obvious ideas to the ideas which are actually really exciting. Now, there's a whole bunch of different techniques out there to get this change of perspective during a brainstorm session. For example, we could use role models. These are just simply different images which might trigger new ideas during the brainstorm session. For example, how would James Bond solve the problem? Or the classic, how would Google go about the situation? Different one, what could the solution look like 30 years from now, in 2015? Another technique is to change between silent brainstorm and loud brainstorm. During the silent brainstorm, everyone in the team works silently on their own on the ideas. While during the loud brainstorm, obviously, the team comes together and shares their ideas and continues developing the ideas. Another tool that actually works really well is to build analogies. That means actually we take the core problem and see how other industries or companies solve that problem. And that often helps us come up with new ideas. And the final one, my personal favorite, is the so-called Crazy 8. This is where we actually play with the element of time. So let me demonstrate. Crazy 8 is quite simple. We just take a piece of paper, A3 or A4, fold it 3 times, So we create 8 rectangles. And then we give ourselves a very, very short time frame, for example, 5 minutes or 6 minutes, to come up with 8 different ideas. So imagine you do this with 5 people or 6 people or even more, how many ideas you can create in such a short amount of time. When you actually run the brainstorm session, you should be aware that ideas actually evolve over time. So first, you actually gather lots of input. That usually happens during the problem space of the design thinking process. And then those ideas, they actually sit in the back of your head and they sort of doze. You don't have to do anything, just let it be. And then after a while, probably when you don't expect it at all of a sudden you have this moment, this enlightenment moment where you go, wow, I've got an idea. And this is actually really, really nice, that feeling. So good ideas really do take time. Don't expect them to just happen within 1 hour during a brainstorm session. So ideation is actually a 2-step process in itself. In the first step, you create lots and lots of ideas. And then in the second phase, you evaluate those ideas and form concepts. There are lots of different ways to actually evaluate ideas, but what we recommend, especially in the beginning, is to look at ideas according to feasibility and actually value for the user. So according to this matrix, we can then plot our ideas and see which ones we're actually going to use for the next phase, the prototyping phase. So ideas up here, they're really easy to implement. And the further to the right they create obviously a much higher value for the user. So those ideas, which are very complex to make and who have absolutely no value for the user, we can just completely ignore or leave out. So what we have at the end of the ideation phase is a short list of ideas which we will then build as prototypes. How we will turn these ideas into prototypes, we will show you in the next video.